Every time we partner with a brand, they leave saying, holy shit, how can we do more? That was insane. We've never seen that level of engagement before.
Every time we have a bull cycle, people come in because they want to make money. And so for every million people that make a wallet to come into crypto, 50,000 people either see the opportunity, made money, or had fun, and they're continuing to stay and participate.
All right, cool. So Luca, Julian, thank you so much for joining us. I am Chris, cover consumer at Messari, and this is my co-host, Seth Bloomberg. So I think we can just dive into this with a couple intros. Maybe just for the people who don't know about your background, know about the project, just give a little bit of information there.
Cool. Let Julian kick it off.
Yeah. Hi, Julian Holguin. I am the CEO of Doodles, and I came into the project I started working with the original founding team like January of 2022. So a few months after they minted, and have been here kind of building out the brand and the vision and the company ever since.
And I'm Luca Netz. I'm the CEO of Pudgy Penguins. We acquired the brand about 2.5 years ago, and the idea was how do we create the face of penguins around the world and ultimately crypto's mascot? And it's been a wild ride ever since.
Awesome. So I want to know, because both of you guys started on the project after launch, and at that period of time, there were a lot of NFT communities popping up. So what about these specific projects gave you that conviction that you want to dedicate your career to this?
I had gotten involved in Web3 and NFTs in my previous job, which was the president of Billboard, the music company. And I had kind of leaned into the space because of the technology and a lot of the stuff that I saw NBA Top Shot was doing. I thought it was just kind of a fantastic new use case for an IP and a brand and a community. And I just started to really get involved. I didn't really mint much. I took a little part into the scene at that point. And this is like 2021. And none of the art really captured my attention much. It was really like Top Shot kind of blew my mind. And then all these communities forming around, what was essentially, illustrations like that kind of blew my mind too. And it became very clear that there was something going on with the culture around NFTs and crypto and what the technology ultimately made possible. And after going down the rabbit hole, and I did some tests at Billboard, like we did some partnerships with The Weeknd. We did some stuff with World of Women. We did some stuff with our Women in Music event, Mariah Carey, Christina Aguilera. It was cool, but it was really kind of to fortify like my knowledge around the space. And I learned a ton. And after getting to meet Scott, Burnt Toast, his vision for, where he wanted to take his brand and ultimately the kind of stories that he wanted to tell just aligned so much with the things that I was seeing in the space and how you could truly cultivate a community around an IP, bring new experiences that are kind of centered on technology around an IP, like true direct to consumer value being brought back to content when the internet brought on the devaluing of content to such a massive extent. It really became clear that I was either going to spend more of my time trying to take the traditional media industry into this world, or I was going to be able to go do it. And it just so happened that we, kind of aligned in our vision, and it all kind of came from there. But I think, what we've seen is that the space has matured a ton in the last couple of years. And I think what you're seeing right now is kind of the true beginnings. Like obviously, like the seeds needed to get planted a couple of years ago, but I think a lot of the work that you're seeing from us, Pudgy's, a lot of our other peers, like this is really what the space was meant to look like. So I'm excited for the next few years.
Yeah, and I think from our perspective, Pudgy Penguins was the first PFP that I actually purchased. Fell in love with the community, fell in love with the memes. If you remember NFTs in kind of their heyday when things first started to get kicked off, I think in that summer it was really, penguins, apes, and punks that started that huge run. And apes and punks continue to do their thing, and rather than just complaining and trying to argue with the founders on what to do, I decided I would step up to the plate, and I just was able to close my eyes and envision where I think this brand could go. So I think that's ultimately how we got here.
So coming into this, having a background in Web2, both of you guys, what did you find that when you're building a community, what does the NFT component of this unlock? Like the asset the community that forms around NFTs.
Like the actual 10K collection that launched on Ethereum.
Yeah, I think, like you have all these people who come together around this, they all have a stake in this financially. So like, how do you view that, building a brand from that level versus building a brand without that sort of like financial incentivization and these people who own this, shared asset? Do you notice differences, or like, how did you view that, building a community that way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's incredibly passive in Web 2. And you can look to, there's varying levels of it, right? But there's sports communities, there's music communities, there's film franchise communities. And in every one of these communities, I'd say sports is probably the best at it. That probably has the most like speculation, financialization around it. But in any of these communities, the IP owner rarely sees their community. Like you could be one of the biggest film franchises in the world, and your most loyal supporters can go to every single movie. They can go to the theme parks. They can buy the merch. They can download the mobile games. They can do all of these different things. And those people that support maybe thousands of dollars, hours of their time, things that build your brand are completely invisible to the IP owner. And through utilizing the technology that has built our brands, we see everybody, and we see every single way that they're supporting us, every single way that they're participating in our ecosystem. And I think that's incredibly valuable when you think about the relationship you can have, because if you can't see your community, how can you ever hope to reward them? And if you're not rewarding them, eventually you're going to lose them, potentially, right? Especially as these new fandom models, as these new community models come to life, like people are going to feel like, okay, well, this community seems to be having an incredible time aligning around this IP, whether again, it's a musician, it's a sports team, it's an entertainment franchise. When we partner with brands and we bring some of these campaigns to market, they're absolutely blown away by the level of engagement that we bring to them, because it's nothing like the stuff that they see with some of the biggest IP franchises in the world. And it's simply because this Web3 communities are built stronger because they feel like they're part of something. I think it was kind of a double-edged sword back in 2021 in the sense that all it was speculation, I guess. And I think the space went viral way before it was ready to. There was not a lot of product built. I think what you're finally starting to see is that there's real apps being built. There's real brands being built. And I think that is really important now because we're rewriting what Web3 means, especially within mainstream media. And this now, like the ecosystem that we're in now, you're finding stronger communities than there ever have been because we've been through stuff together. We've been up, we've been down. Like it's a different level of being a part of something. The technology makes you a part of it. Like you own a part of the culture that these tokens represent, whether they're NFTs, meme coins, etc. But at the end of the day, like our community is part of our IP the same way that any of the fictional characters that we create are. And they feel that every single day. And that is not something that really exists, I'd say, outside of like some select sports and games cultures, but definitely not in like Hollywood driven franchise IP, which is really, where we're kind of trying to rewrite the playbook. So I think that's a little bit of how we think about it.
Yeah. And Luca, does that change with you? Because I know you guys are obviously focused on some parts of entertainment, but you also have your toy line and you have other merchandise you're doing. So like, how does it impact you, that community of NFT holders?
Yeah, I think it's just this idea of aligned incentives, and I think it creates a new layer. I think traditional IP has been built through this relationship of brand and consumer. And I think the NFT adds a layer of participation. So, it goes from brand, participant, and then consumer. And so it's kind of like a reinvention of how you align with your early believers and first adopters. And then it unlocks a ton of different things. Like in Pudgy Penguin's example, like every toy that you see in Walmart and Target, is actually licensed from an NFT holder. They're participating in the upside of the success. Every time one of those toys sells, they are getting a royalty in perpetuity that gets paid out, every January. And so I think from this perspective, it adds a really, really interesting lens and creates a new dynamic between how I think these brands are built. And ultimately, I think it's the ultimate accelerant or the ultimate deterrent to your success. And so if you kind of look at Pudgy Penguin's history, how we got here, how quickly it took us to get here, I think if you kind of line that up and understand the potential that I think was kind of garnered via these early believers, I think it put us in a position to kind of expedite what usually takes, 10, 15 years. You're able to do it in 2, 3, 4, or 5 because, instead of just, a team or a singular entity pushing something, you have hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of people all aligned to see the success of this thing, in a pretty quick fashion.
One other component of, I think, just crypto in general and building brands in crypto is that you're immediately addressing a global audience. So I'm wondering like how that factors into your go-to-market or like the way that you release products, like keeping in mind that you do have like owners all over the globe.
I think any brand that I've been a part of has been a global brand, so doesn't adjust anything that we are doing internally.
The one thing that I think about Doodles, I mean, and honestly, like Penguins is like it's universally accepted around the world. So I think it's like an easier thing for us to create, that global acceptance or that global interest in the brands, because like we find some of the things that have like an American spin only, like some of the content we create tends to go less viral than stuff that is kind of really left to the end audience's interpretation. So I'd say like, for us, like a lot of the stuff that we got is like, you're only doing events in the US, like it's really like a resource thing. So I'd say it is difficult to build a brand on a global scale based on the limited resources that startups have. But at the end of the day, like if your content it's easier than ever to get content and products to go viral on a global scale because these platforms that we're operating on, like they have such massive global footprints. So I'd say like if you're creating great content, it is going to be a global opportunity for you.
And I think just coming back a little bit to, like you guys have both worked a lot in Web 2 and done this there. Are there some things that you've noticed like is just missing in Web 3 or like might not be part of the actual structure of how people approach brand building in Web 3?
I think that communities being invisible to IP holders, it's a really big thing. Like I read some headline the other day that was like super franchises, think the Marvels and the Game of Thrones of the world. They're doing like focus groups with super fans to like try and influence scripts that are like middle to late stage development. Like that is how we operate every single day. Like we have a product panel that gets to see like all of our decisions very early in the process. So we're constantly tinkering with our ideas based on what we're hearing from the community. Like these products, this brand is quite literally being built with the community. And if you're like a big entertainment franchise or even like really anything in Web 2, you're not even thinking like that, let alone figuring out how to democratize that process and choose people to be a part of that. We have all this on-chain data that is not the same thing as Web 2, data that you can get. And the best part about it is you can also stay anonymous. Like if you don't want to give like your name and you don't want to dox who you are, like that, we can still see you and what you are in our community without needing to know exactly who you are. So I'd say like that is a really big thing that, that Web 2 is sleeping on. And there's more stuff, just like the idea that being finally able to own something digitally, knowing that we live most of our lives in digital environments, and that ownership basically means you own a part of the culture and the attention that brand that you care about represents. You've never really been able to do that with anything before. There is no collectible, there is no asset, like some physical collectibles, sure, right? Like Charizard cards, Pokemon cards, like, all of that. I get it. But it's not quite as scalable as this, and it's not quite as dynamic as this. So I'd say that people in Web 2 are just completely sleeping. We have the meetings that we're in, they don't understand it at all. Like it really is specialized knowledge. Even digital and mobile games is specialized knowledge compared to like really who controls the distribution of media in the world. So when you take it to like on-chain gamification and the things that we're all doing, like it's going way over their head. And that's why they made so many bad decisions a couple of years ago. So I'd say like there's a massive learning curve. And through partnering with people like us, and when I say us, I mean like, the Doodles of the world, the Pudgys of the world, the Azukis of the world. I really think that's the only way they're going to get the knowledge that they need to actually bring these things to market, because there's so few people that are actually building crypto native IP in the way that, some like us and some of our peers are.
Yeah, and like, what do those conversations look like? Like, if you're sitting down with a Web 2 brand and you're telling them about what you do, or you're interested in partnering with them, like, how is that received? Like, what's the general sentiment around that in that world?
It depends on the brand. Some brands have their token Web3 person and NFT guy that was there in 2021, and they know all the stuff, and they have a Pudgy penguin, they have a doodle, or they did back then at least, and they think they know kind of like what it takes to pivot and build in the space. So you get a little bit of that. Most of those people, frankly, aren't there anymore. And they've kind of like, if they kept their jobs, their jobs are more like, kind of emerging tech is the title now, or games. And there's just kind of like a lack of proactive investment in what we're doing. And the way that we find we have the most success in kind of getting through, like, this is why we should be partnering. It's storytelling, it's brand development. Like, we don't say like we're an NFT project when we go and meet with some of the brands that we meet with. We say we're a next generation entertainment company. We prioritize technology, we prioritize community. We're bringing content experiences and collecting experiences to the world in completely new ways. And what it is ultimately doing is driving like really serious engagement and real kind of like affinity for our community, for our project, for our brand. For brands and for, frankly, like the big entertainment studios and just anybody that's not day to day in this space or doesn't have the knowledge you have, you really have to make it familiar for them, right? Like, how can you make partnering with Doodles as easy as partnering with Roblox? How can you make partnering with Doodles as easy as partnering with like Genshin or an anime franchise they know? Like, that is really what you have to do to get people out of their own way, so they don't just, like, you saw it on Joe Rogan this morning, like whenever it was, I just saw this clip, like he's slamming Bored Ape Yacht Club and the crappy cartoon monkey. Like, there's such a lack of knowledge about what we do because of what went viral in 2021. You need to figure out ways to get people out of their own way to see the value of what we do. And then every time we partner with a brand, they leave saying, holy shit, how can we do more? That was insane. We've never seen that level of engagement before. So one thing will lead to another, it will snowball, but there's still a major uphill battle to fight when it comes to getting people to really think about us the right way.
And like, Luca, what have you seen from your side? So like, say someone, finds Pudgy's through like maybe buying one of the plushie toys. Like, what's the general feedback that you get from Web2 people who are like coming into this for the first time?
I think like our whole approach is we're not trying to force them into being NFT buyers. We're kind of treating the conversion process like a process and not necessarily an action. And so I think from our perspective, if they discover that this is our origin, then they discover it and they participate. I think a lot of what we do to kind of meet the demand or create demand around the NFT side is, I think you see more conversion from, the Pudgy toy being purchased by a niece or a nephew, and then, a crypto native user seeing that this brand is permeating outside of the space. And I think our objective today is just like, how do we create trust and credibility and familiarity so that when the winds of the bull market are in our sails, we have all the leverage and we have all those familiar touch points to kind of make that conversion. So today, the goal is just to be the face of penguins around the world. And then within the crypto universe, how do we become that de facto mascot? And, we're kind of building this nucleus in this community that, loves the penguin. And when the wind is in our sails, we'll work really hard to try to convert them into collectors.
Lucas, something I wanted to get your take on here as you're talking about products and like these plushies. Most of the products and like content typically are like off chain or in some kind of like a Web2 environment. And I think you've been doing, Pudgy's have been doing more work on like abstract chain, which is I think an L2 that's getting built out, which looks interesting. It's kind of being, I think, framed as like a consumer chain. So I wanted to get your take on like what that looks like. Are there, specific on-chain products that will be integrated with Pudgy's and the Pudgy family? Curious to hear your opinions on that.
Yeah, I think what we were to make people familiar, all of our products, in Web2 are powered in some capacity by blockchain technology. So our toys that are in Walmart and Target, for example, every toy that we sell comes with a QR code. When you scan that QR code, you're instructed to sign up to Pudgy World. When you put an email and a password, you're given a custody wallet through our custody wallet solution. You're then asked to redeem 3 to 5 NFTs that are digital wearables that go on your forever Pudgy. And all of that is done through a gasless experience. And the inception of that starts with the purchase of a toy at your local Walmart and Target. And so today we have hundreds of thousands of people who have redeemed those trades, who have signed up, who have their wallets. And that is an example of one experience, that is powered on chain that is kind of positioned towards mass. Now, while we were exploring the different chains to kind of power these products, ultimately, the conclusion that I came to was that a majority of the chains today are general purpose. And what I really needed was a consumer first chain that was really able to, optimize and power certain experiences that I think general purpose chains are not willing to compromise on. So this idea that, if I want to do something positioned for the end consumer, general purpose chains, because they're not consumer only chains, they can't necessarily do it because it might, compromise the integrity of their DeFi ecosystem, for example. And so this kind of led me to think that I actually think one, general purpose chains are fundamentally broken and how people in the ethos and how people build it, just fundamentally, as an entrepreneur, the lift and the resourcing necessary to actually execute that, I think is near impossible. And you're either going to get really lucky or you're going to have the operational excellence to actually pull it off. And so we actually kind of saw this opportunity in terms of kind of exploring to find certain chains to power our ecosystem. We thought to ourselves, well, nobody seems to be taking a consumer first approach. And I think that kind of opened the door for us to say, hey, we have a problem. This problem is, relevant to all of our ecosystem products. Nobody seems to be solving this problem. But not only is this a huge problem, I actually think it's a huge opportunity. And so I think whoever can be the de facto consumer chain, who can create those best, those optimal experiences for people that are trying to build, in the same breath that maybe Pudgy Penguins is building, kind of seemed like a good opportunity for us to kind of capture that market share in that respect. So we recently acquired Frame about 3 months ago. Ever since then, we've been kind of building towards this end vision of, being the default consumer chain within crypto. I think our main focus today, and I think over the next 12 to 24 months, is really optimizing around fun and fun experiences. I think fun is probably going to be the first breakthrough vertical within consumer that is going to, break into mass. And then, once you have a good moat of users around fun, you can upsell them on, more consumer-oriented products and verticals. And so, obviously that's going to power everything in the Pudgy Penguin ecosystem, everything within the Igloo, which is the holding company. And yeah.
I want to get both your takes on what do you think the financialization and speculative part of crypto introduces to culture, to identity, to brand building as a whole?
I think it's really interesting, and Jay, I'll let you go after. I know I've been letting you go first, but this one I'm actually really fascinated by. I think one of the most interesting mechanics, and I think underappreciated mechanics around tokenization, is this idea of taking intangible things and making them tangible, right? And so you're seeing this with IP, you're seeing this with memes, you're seeing this with cultural movements, things that you couldn't really index or monetize or quantify. I'm more excited about the tokenization of intangible assets and making them tangible than I am the tokenization of tangible assets and making them borderless. I think this idea, because I think you're opening up an entirely new category and industry. If people appreciate it and value it, could have endless TAM, could have a consistently an evergreen growing TAM of where you could go. So this idea of being able to take something that is maybe a movement or a saying or a cultural phenomenon and being able to index it and allowing people to speculate on it, I think is super fascinating. And this idea, and it goes back to maybe the earlier question when we talk about like NFTs and alignment, don't underestimate the power of financial alignment. I would argue it's probably the most powerful mechanism that you can usher an issue, because ultimately, you see what people do for no incentive whatsoever. Imagine what people, and no need to imagine, I mean, we're seeing it today, brands like Doodles, brands like Pudgy, meme coins. People are doing things that would have taken tens of, decades to do, and they're doing it in a fraction of the time. I think I'm most excited about this idea of taking intangible assets or things, well, not even assets. They're not assets because they're not tangible, but intangible movements and things of influence and making them tangible through tokenization.
I completely agree. The idea that you can own culture, what does that even mean? Like we're showing what it means. Like you can own the culture that the brand is creating. That's kind of an unprecedented concept, right? Like the only really strong analogy I can give is like if you owned the first edition pack of Charizard, and I might get some of my timelines wrong here, but if you owned like Charizard cards from the first edition pack of Pokemon cards, and then all of a sudden the Pokemon company started building out all this lore around that character and you owned it, and you could and like you're never able to take away from the idea that you own it, except with an NFT that was issued instead of a physical card. There's a smart contract that gives you all sorts of benefits for being a part of that community, and you tie your digital identity to it, and you yourself become a meme and you have social currency tied to it. I think people don't understand the NFTs because I still think they have a lack of understanding of the way the internet works and the way our society actually works. When you see things like meme coins and people really not understanding it, or you see things like these are just pictures of cartoons that you can right click and save. Like, people don't understand what's actually happening here. And those might even be like the titans of today. It's a fascinating thing that's happening. I think it's very specialized knowledge right now. And I think the people that are working on it are going to be the Mr. Beasts, the Yahoos, the Googles, the Joe Rogans, the, Alex Coopers of the future.
Yeah, and I mean that makes so much sense. And I think like there's this kind of inherent pushback from certain communities. Like, you talk to musicians, you talk to artists, like there's a stigma attached to that. So like, what's your perspective on that? And like, when you're just talking to someone who's involved in the art scene who might not get it yet, like how are you conveying this, kind of overarching thesis to them to get them involved?
I think it's really like the issue before was just, it was a lack of understanding. It was just kind of like, you remember what Game of Thrones did? Like, they did all these companies, like, who got assigned to Web3 was the licensing teams. It was the, like, physical product teams. Like, it was the consumer products teams. Like, it wasn't marketing people. It wasn't business development people. It was really like people that had a number to hit. So they treated NFTs like digital action figures, right? They licensed it out to all these companies that didn't actually have real business models outside of the bubble. And you ended up getting just like a lot of crap in the world, and a lot of consumers that felt burned. Companies, the IP operators, kind of felt burned themselves because they allocated all these resources to things that didn't end up actually having a long shelf life. So I think what we try and urge to people is like, take a small approach. There's not many people that know how to do what we know how to do. And if you have like a line of people telling you and all these people pitching you, they're wrong. The same thing exists in meme coins today, which is why almost 99% of the celebrity meme coins that hit the market are complete trash, and you should very much stay away from them. There are so few that are actually doing it the right way, and it's so obvious to spot now versus when they started, like who's really in it for the right reasons. So it's really kind of about education, but the unfortunate reality is with anything new, there's going to be people that are just trying to exploit it solely for financial gain or solely for getting ahead, and you're gonna run into a lot of crap. And that is unfortunate for brands like us, but at the end of the day, like, you stay true to what you're building. Like, you get through that at some point, and every single time something successful happens, like Pudgy Penguins get into Walmart, Doodles does this, massive campaign with all these music videos that are trending on Spotify and YouTube. Like, every single time one of those things happens, like, the credibility gets a little bit more prevalent for people that are maybe interested in coming into this space. And the interest of, like, I'll never forget, we were at the Toronto Film Festival event. There were a few major actors from like the biggest film franchises there. You would know exactly who I'm talking about. I'm not going to like name drop though. And then there were heads of studios there. And they were like, wait a minute. So this is Pharrell and Doodles started as an NFT. Like, this is what it is. Like, you guys are making like music videos and content, and like these people like own your NFTs, and they're like they don't get it. And then the movie studio execs were like, oh, you're in the business of bringing people together, just like we are. People get in their own way. Like, they take bad advice, they get burned, and then they don't think about it ever again. So whether it's an artist or a studio or a musician or anything like that, it's really just about educating yourself and trying new things and sticking with it if it doesn't go like exactly the way that you expect it to on day one.
And it's interesting because I think the burn thing goes both ways. Like what you were talking about, like celebrities coming into crypto, right? And like we have so much trauma from that happening. But then you see like these celebrities, like in my opinion, Iggy is like kind of doing it right. She's like in the trenches with people. She's got the crypto culture about it, and she's here for the long run. So it almost seems like there's going to need to be this like mutual understanding that this mass adoption that we've wanted is like coming from both directions, right?
100%. Like, every random celebrity that dropped a meme coin, that's not onboarding a single person from their fandom, right? Like, if it was, they'd be blasting it all over their TikTok and their Instagram. They're not doing that. They're hitting it up on Twitter. Yeah, you see people like Iggy who have done surprising and incredible work in this space. Like, and it's very obvious to the people that are operating every day. The space is maturing, right? Like, and it's going to take some time. I think the problem with crypto sometimes is like people want to get in on something and then have their life changed overnight, which does happen, right? But I think the point that Luca made earlier is 95% of people actually lose money. So, if there was a gong that went off every single time somebody lost, there would be gongs going off all day, every day. But the only thing you see on Twitter is, yeah, I just, ran up the scoreboard. And so I think like the expectations that people have coming from the outside in are just really unrealistic. But once you're in here and you've like, had a couple of years in the trenches, like you know what it takes.
So kind of going off of that a little bit, like, we have all these moments that are happening where it's like, you're seeing the mainstream adoption come in, right? However you feel about that, some people are feeling, like they got burned, they might not be accepting it. But are there certain verticals that you see as the most likely maybe to bring people in or to get that mainstream adoption, like within the consumer sector?
Yeah, and while Julian, you were talking, I hadn't been on your guys' YouTube in a while. It like played. I don't know if you guys heard it. It was pretty dope. I didn't know that Little Yachty song was doing that well. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's crushing. It was fun, man. He's like a cartoon himself, man. He loved it.
No, it's great. You guys are doing great work. Been saying it for a long time. I think you guys are one of the greats for sure. I might be biased here, but I think it depends what you're optimizing for. I think if you want to get people in the right way, right? The way that is not, and I mean the right way, because back to my earlier point, I'll give you guys like a deeper dive into kind of how I'm thinking of this. But like every time we have a bull cycle, people come in because they want to make money. And so for every million people that make a wallet to come into crypto because they want to make money, because that's what bull cycles drive, 950,000 of them lose money and they never participate again, or they scream the death of crypto or hate crypto from that point moving forward. However, 50,000 people either see the opportunity, made money, or had fun, and they're continuing to stay and participate, right? The problem is every time millions of people come in and 95% of them lose money, you are adopting and you are making progress, but you're not making as much progress as you think. And so people coming into crypto to make money is them not coming in the right way, right? That is them coming in a way that is, it works for the people that are early, but ultimately it's a path where I think if you understand the opportunity for crypto, I really think there's two paths here. I think one path is probably the current trajectory, in which I think, you've probably got a ceiling of 10, 15 trillion dollars, right? You'll have digital gold, you'll have programmable money, and then you'll have the casino, and that will be that. I think there's another route, which is, blockchain and crypto rails powers the next generation of internet economies, in which there's endless TAM. There's an evergreen growing TAM. And I think it could be north of $100 trillion. Now, if you want to get there, you've got to get there because people are coming in because they see the value in blockchain rails, and they value, being censorship resistant. They value borderless liquidity. They value, being able to send transactions, to friends, seamlessly. They value this idea of composability and kind of open source work. They see the value in that. And I think, if you want to get people in the right way, what are the couple mechanisms to do it? I think digital collectibles, I believe, are interesting. Obviously, that comes with some sort of bias, but I believe people love to collect because they love something, not necessarily because they think price is going to go up or price is going to go down. So I think that is interesting. I think brand is a pretty interesting one. I think social is a super interesting one. People like Julian and myself are probably working fervorously against the tides on this, in terms of trying to build something that is bigger than price going up or price going down, or at least a little more meaningful. However, I don't know if that is increasingly possible. The more that I begin to understand is, maybe because of the way that crypto is structured and tokenization, maybe this is just the way that things are, and maybe there's a behavioral pattern that I'm not necessarily understanding. But my hope and my goal is that we get people to come in on chain because they don't want to go and pay the 6% banking processing fee to go start their business. They value all of the properties that I think blockchain kind of gives them. So far, not the case, but I think businesses built around leaning into more of the intrinsic properties of digital ownership and being censorship resistant and borderless liquidity and composability. I think those are probably the businesses that will serve crypto the best. So it's yet to be seen, but that's probably what I'm rooting for.
I don't really have anything to add to that. I agree. I mean, I think the main thing that's going to bring people in, and I'm biased just because like we're kind of squarely focused on building a brand that is a community, right? Like we try and say that where the community is the brand is the community, and then everything else is just an activation of that, right? Whether that's film or social content or merchandise. And we believe that being a part of a community that is doing awesome stuff, like, you know, making music videos with Lil Yachty and Lil Wayne and Pharrell, and then your doodle, your digital identity is co-starring in the music video or the film that we make, like that's pretty awesome. And if you have a chance to do that and you know you're a part of that community, like what are we actually talking about right now? We're talking about fun, we're talking about identity, we're talking about having fun on the internet and actually being able to make a little money while you do it, have a little fun while you do it. Like people, our wearables platform, we have, you know, the platform called the Doodles Studio, where basically you can dress up your Doodles avatar in collabed digital apparel or digital apparel that just comes from our brand, you know, varying levels of rarity and things like that. So we've been selling these packs basically every month since we relaunched the platform in July. And there are people that have gotten really good at buying packs, getting the stuff that they want, and then flipping them for a profit. So not only did you get what you wanted, but you actually made a little money while you did that. And it's a skill. It's not something that anyone can just do. And maybe you're not going to be able to hit every single time, but people are getting good at it the same way people are getting good at like farming for streetwear drops and farming for all the different things that people collect and farm for. So, you know, you just think about how scalable that is with blockchain and how scalable that is with NFTs and tokens and things like that. I really believe wholeheartedly that that is going to be the thing that brings the masses. And you've already seen it with brands like Doodles and Pudgy Penguins, who have really prioritized consumer experiences and brought a lot of that on chain. Like we have users, you know, we have daily active visits to our platforms, our products. It's not like we're just like striving for product market fit. There are parts of our business that already have real product market fit. Like everybody's like, when are you going to go mainstream? We have like some things dropping this year that are going to prove like, well, if we're not mainstream, then I don't know what brand is. I think like a lot of what we're seeing right now, the more of it that happens, I believe that it'll just start becoming clear to people like, oh, this was the use case that they've been talking about this entire time. And I do believe that will drive innovation and other things.
So I just wanted to wrap with what can people expect, you know, in the next couple months, year, and like, what are you guys most excited for within the projects?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, we're going to put all our chips on the table here over these next couple of months. We're going to do a lot of things that I think people aren't expecting. Obviously, there's some a little bit of context and color around abstract, but to be frank, I think there's a lot under the hood that we get to show. We've got some big moments for Pudgy. Obviously, Q4 has historically been our best time. Just naturally, penguins are a family-oriented character, and so, and obviously all of our retail products and things that we're doing in that respect. But it's going to be a wild next couple of months. I think a lot of what you guys are going to see here shortly, a lot of people are not expecting. So excited to get things going.
Yeah, it's similar on our side. I mean, we got some more music in the works. We got some really big brand partnerships in the works, some growth opportunities that people probably aren't expecting from us at this stage quite yet. And a lot of product improvements and new things coming to market. But, the whole film and music video thing that we just executed from July through September was really the setup for where the brand is going, and it kind of really set the foundation. I think the cool thing about our space and being on podcasts like this with people like Luca and what a couple of our other peers are doing is it's going to get really hard to keep up with the level of production that is coming out of the top projects, and it's also going to create a North Star for what to expect. It's going to get harder to compete in the NFT space because of the work of Doodles and Pudgy Penguins and some of our peers. So I think it's a really exciting time because I think we're setting a new bar, and I think it's frankly what the space deserves and what the space needs to really get out of the 2.5-year craziness that we were just in.
So we're going to get some new tracks, get some new drops.
We will. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. We have a ton coming. I don't want to speculate too much, but it's going to be a fun winter.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. This was awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you both very much.